Hi there, Emily Midgett here with you today for Pinkfresh Studio YouTube channel, and today I have a video that is doing a little bit different technique than my normal technique. We're going to use the Pinkfresh Studio dye inks to do some watercoloring. Now I have here I have my Best of Everything stamp set that I illustrated for Pinkfresh a long time ago. It's been a couple years now, and we're going to pair it with some Distress watercolor paper. Now this paper is a little bit different than normal watercolor paper. It's made to work with ink blending and with dye inks. So we're going to do some watercoloring with it with some ink blending. So I'm going to start by heat embossing the Best of Everything stamp set onto the smooth side of the Distress watercolor paper. And because this stamp set has a lot of detail in it, it's a large stamp set. It almost covers the entirety of an A2 card front, and there's a ton of detail on this stamp set. And we're going to use that detail to work to our advantage with this watercoloring. This is a very simple watercoloring technique. And I'm just heat embossing this image with some gold embossing powder. And it's beautiful how it picks up all of that detail. That gold embossing powder picked up all of that detail on that because we used the smooth side of that watercolor paper. So now what I'm doing, I am laying down a base layer of ink blending, and I'm going to use Ballet Slipper, Peach Fuzz, and Warm Buff inks to lay down that first base layer. Because these dye inks are water-based, you can use them in a similar way to traditional watercolors. They are not going to be as high quality as watercolors. They're not going to move as easily and as nicely. But it's really nice to be able to get more bang for your buck out of your paper crafting supplies. And this is just one way that if you don't have the stencils that go along with this, you can get kind of a stenciled look with using your inks and a damp paintbrush. So I'm just ink blending the very first layer. I'm just blending right over the top, doing some emboss resist ink blending with those three colors, the Ballet Slipper, Peach Fuzz, and Warm Buff inks. And I'm just kind of blending in kind of a random, no real pattern or rhyme or reason. I'm just kind of covering, making sure to cover the entirety of the card front. So now I have taped down my blended card front, and then part of what I enjoy about watercoloring is the transparency of the watercolors themselves. And dye inks are the same. They are water-based, so they are transparent. So that base layer of color, that kind of variation of color that we're going to have in the background, that is going to shine through our top layer of watercoloring. That base layer of where we've got some kind of color variegation all over that card front and all throughout all of those different flowers, it is going to shine through and provide a little bit of interest to our background. So I have tapped out, that was some evergreen ink. I have tapped out some onto my glass paper crafting mat that I have on my work surface. And I'm just using a damp paintbrush to pick up some of that color and keep maneuvering it around on my images. This paper, this isn't a perfect system. If you are looking for really detailed, intricate watercoloring, use your regular watercolors. But for someone who maybe is not sure if they want to invest in legitimate watercolors, or if you're just looking for a different look, a fun, different technique to play with, this is the technique for you. Now, I have moved on to this flower, and I'm using passion fruit ink. Now, if you'll notice, the very first petal, I laid down just some ink, some undiluted ink that I picked up with my paintbrush onto the dry watercolor paper. And if you'll notice, that watercolor doesn't seem to want to move very easily. And I am not sure why. The color kind of sinks down into the watercolor paper fibers. And so then it doesn't really want to move. So a trick that I found, if you wet the area that you're wanting to work in, like if you're wanting to work in a specific petal, get that area wet with clean water like I'm doing right here, and then pick up some color from your glass mat, dab it on there. That watercolor, or that water, that damp paper, the damp area of that paper will spread out. It's called blooming. And that watercolor will move wherever there is dampness on your paper. And it's a really easy way to get kind of an organic fade out from your watercoloring. So this, now I've got some Raspberry Bliss. I've done the large poppy flower. Now we're going to move on to the tulips. And this is, I'm not doing anything super involved as far as creating shadows and depth and everything. I'm just doing some basic top petals are lighter, bottom petals are darker because they're more in the shadow. I'm not adding any extra colors or anything, pretty much just one color per flower, or maybe mixture of 2 colors per flower, but just very basic. So this is kind of, it's a very similar look to the stencils that you can, the look that you can get with the stencils, the layered stencils. So moving on to the daffodil, we've got the peach fuzz here. And with the peach fuzz, because it's such a light color, that color that we created in the background with the blending, that really shines through with that peach fuzz because it's such a light color. We're moving on to the rose. I've mixed the passion fruit and the peach fuzz together to create kind of a lovely pale coral. And one thing that you need to remember with all watercoloring, the more you dilute the color with clean water, the lighter that color will be. So adding that extra water to the color, it softens it, and it acts like mixing white paint or white color with a darker color. It lightens it. It makes it a little bit softer and less intense. So now I've moved on to the ranunculus. Now this ranunculus bloom, the petals are curled over. A lot of the petals are curled over. So what I'm doing is I am adding, basically just adding shadow to the areas that are curled over and leaving those top petals, the top part where it's curled, leaving that alone and just adding shadow to that base, that bottom area where it's kind of curled over. So you can see the finished image. This took me less than half an hour to heat emboss, blend, and watercolor this entire image. Very, very fast process. So now I am taking the Sentiment Sweet Hello. This is a new, it's kind of breathing life. These new foil plates, so for the sentiments, are breathing life into some older products that we have here at Pinkfresh. And the Sentiment Sweets are wonderful products. They are so versatile and you get so many different sentiment options. And I love this large hello foiled image that we get here. I first hot foiled it with some gold hot foil, and then I die cut it with the coordinating die. And now I am using those same 3 colors that we used for the base layer of the ink blending on our floral panel. I have left the die cut word inside of the negative space of the original piece that I cut it from, and now I'm just ink blending on it. That helps, leaving it in that piece helps to give it a little bit of stability. So I'm just adding a little bit of color because that background piece is completely saturated with color. I don't want any extraneous bits of white on my card front. So you can see that it's completely colored, it's completely saturated with color. Now we're going to add a frame. This is the Pretty Frames 2 die set, and I love that you get so many options with this die set. There's like 5 or 6 different frames that cut from just the one die. So I'm going to use the outer 2 frames, and then I'm going to save those other frames that are left over for a rainy day. And now I'm just going to add some a sentiment from another portion of sentiment from the Best of Everything stamp set. I'm going to heat emboss it in some gold, and then I'm going to do a little bit of ink blending over the top just to add another little element of that kind of peachy pink background color that we have created. And again, that gold embossing powder, it resists the ink, so it's perfect for this emboss resist technique. So I'm adding this gold frame to my card base with some liquid adhesive. And the added bonus of adding this frame, that watercolor paper warped a little bit when I was watercoloring because I did add a lot of water to it. There was a lot of liquid added to that watercolor paper, so it warped a little bit. So adding that gold frame cut from that gold foil cardstock, that's a very heavy duty cardstock, it helps to add a little bit of stability and kind of flatten that out a little bit. I also did keep it underneath, keep that watercolor piece underneath a board and my die cut machine overnight because it was very warped. And then in the morning it was better, but it wasn't perfect. So adding that gold frame really helped to kind of smooth that out. So now we're just adding the greeting pieces, the greeting die cut pieces with some foam tape. And I did add a little bit of gold glitter paper, just one more element of shiny gold for this card front. And it helps to kind of draw the eye to that sentiment. I feel like that kind of got lost a little bit in that busy background, the busy colorful background and the bright shiny hello sentiment. That gold glitter strip just helps to kind of draw your eye down to that sentiment strip that we've got there. So now I've got a couple of matte gold pearls from the Pinkfresh Studio Essentials line. I'm just going to adhere those with some liquid adhesive. I do keep my pearls, my embellishments in groups of 3 or 5 when I add them. So that's something else to remember, that you can, when you're adding embellishments, it's best to keep them in odd numbers. They're more visually pleasing. We're all finished now. I hope you enjoyed that project. I hope it gives you a little bit more confidence with your watercolors to know that it's just a matter of kind of tapping some ink out onto your glass mat and picking it up with a damp paintbrush, and you can create beautiful watercolored looks very, very quickly and easily. So if you liked this video, hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.